Okay.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our third installment of Rotted, Recycled, and Resurrected. In today's video program, our class is going to be with Dr. Bill Lester again. He's going to be talking about beetles and other trash collectors today. How important are the beetles out in nature? How important are they in our yard? And what we can do with them. Last week, he spoke about the fungus among us. And before he gets started, though, I do have a question for you about a fungus question.
Okay.
How much room does fungus need to grow?
I don't know. How much room does fungus need to grow?
As much room as possible.
I'm not sure if we're going to keep that in the video or cut that one out. We'll keep it though.
I will, with no further ado, allow Dr.
Great.
William Lester to take over the beetle program today.
Okay, let me go ahead and open up my presentation here. Okay, can you see that okay? Thumbs up? Thumbs down? Okay, I see thumbs up. So, okay, good morning, everybody. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. As Lilly said, my name is Bill Lester. I'm with University of Florida IFAS Extension Service in Hernando County. And today we're going to talk a little bit about beetles. Beetles are definitely one of my favorite topics. Anything insect related is a lot more interesting, I think, than irrigation or lawns, although that's important also. But this is going to be just a little overview of some of the different beetles that you may encounter in your yard. And we're sticking mostly with ones that you would encounter, or if you ever do encounter them, you need to call us right away. And which ones are going to be potential problems in your yard, inside of your house, in your landscape, and which ones aren't. Because a lot of beetles are either beneficial, or they're eating fungi, or they're helping to break down wood or mulch, and they're really not harming anything in the environment. And we don't want people to go into a panic if they see them, to think, oh my gosh, I need to spray, I need to call my pest control person, because many of them are not a problem. The beetle that you see pictured here is an air potato beetle, and that is a very important beneficial beetle for anybody watching who has a problem with the air potato vine. It's a really bad invasive plant here in Florida, and in many other Gulf Coast states. It stretches from Florida all the way around to Houston, Texas, and as far north as, we've had reports as far north as Virginia and Maryland. We always have to kind of check those out. But this is a beetle that was brought in to eat those plants and to help keep it a little bit better under control. So that's a really good beetle right there. But when we're talking about beetles or insects in general, insects are all members of the animal kingdom. They're in the phylum Arthropoda, which means that they have jointed legs and a hard shell. So they're related to, let's see, spiders and crabs and lobsters and ticks and many other things. But insects are all in their own class Insecta. And there's, all depending on what book you read or which entomologist you follow, there's approximately 29 orders. Even entomologists can't agree on exactly how many orders of insects there are, but beetles all belong to the insect order Coleoptera. And there are a huge number of species of Coleoptera around the world, and even here in Florida. It is by far the largest insect order out of all the different orders of insects. There's more than 300,000 species of beetles in the world that we know of. And literally every day we discover new species of insects. It may be something they find on a tropical island out in the Pacific or in China or some, faraway place. But we discover new species of insects right here in Florida. On average, the last number I heard was every week and a half, a new species of insect is discovered here in Florida and establishes. They're not all pests. Some of them are beneficial. Some of them are really not pests. They're not good. They're not bad. They're just here. but many of them can be very, very bad pests. And we're going to talk a little bit more about a few of them when we go in the lab to actually look at some insects live with the iPad. So there's about 25,000 different species here in the United States, broken up into 112 families. So for somebody like me who has to identify beetles, it can be a little difficult. 112 families, 25,000 species in the US. There's not quite that many here in Florida, but there's a lot. So I can't sight ID every beetle or every insect you drop in my hand. We have to use keys and guides and a microscope to go through to figure out exactly what species it is. In the world of beetles, a lot of them are pests, and we're going to talk about them, but a lot of them are beneficial also. They are predators, so they eat other insects and help keep them under control. A lot of them eat fungi, so they help clean up fungi and lichens and things out in the environment. And then a lot of them are recyclers. They eat fallen trees and organic matter out in the woods to help recycle them and return them to the soil. And all beetles have chewing mouth parts. So when any beetle eats or feeds, whether it's an immature beetle or an adult, it chews its food up. That food may be a plant, that food may be a mushroom, it may be a part of a dead tree, or it may be another insect or caterpillar or something like that. But whenever it eats something, it chews it up. So beetles, like I said, can range from very, very beneficial to very destructive. I am confident that everybody here today knows what a ladybird beetle, or they're also called ladybugs, is. And the picture on the left has a lot of very common ones. So chances are, if I showed you a picture of them, you would go, that's a ladybug, I know what that is. And if I asked you, is it a good bug or a bad bug, you probably know it's a good bug, because ladybugs or ladybird beetles eat other insect pests. Depending on what species it is, they might eat aphids or whiteflies or insect eggs or mealybugs, but they generally eat a wide variety of pests. Now, an example of an extremely destructive beetle is here on the right. And this is an aerial view of a pine tree forest, probably North Florida or maybe Southern Georgia, Southern Alabama. And this is an outbreak of southern pine bark beetles. This is a native insect that we have a little bit of a problem with every year, but every 20 or 30 years or so in the Southeast US, there'll be a huge outbreak of southern pine bark beetles, and they will go through forests and kill tens of thousands of otherwise perfectly healthy pine trees. And they spread and spread and spread until fall, when they naturally die back. Their populations naturally go up and down, and we have not had an outbreak here in Hernando County in, I think, at least 30 years. Many years ago, there was a huge outbreak, and it killed so many pine trees that tree services were hired to help clear the dead pine trees from public land and parks and alongside of the roads and highways. And they were here for several years, clearing just dead pine trees that were wiped out. So like I said, we have not had a problem with it in many years, but one day we will probably have another outbreak. So that's an example of a very, very destructive beetle. So when it comes to beetles, immature beetles have a head, and they have, like I said, chewing mouth parts. They have 3 legs, so they look a little caterpillar-like, but they don't have many legs like a caterpillar does. If you roll them over and look carefully, it has just 6 legs. And the body is shaped in different ways depending on what kind of beetle it is. It could be a very slender, active crawling insect, or it could be a body form that's called scarabiform, which is very common among scarab beetles, and those are grubs. So if anybody's familiar with the beetle grub, and you can find them digging in your garden, repotting plants that are out in your yard. If anybody here today fishes, beetle grubs are a very good fish bait. So they're the little short, fat grubs that look like a caterpillar, but they only have 6 legs. They don't have many legs like a caterpillar does. Or other beetles have what's called a wireworm. So it's like a beetle grub, but it's long and skinny and very stiff. It really does look like a little short piece of wire. And they can be pests sometimes. And there's one kind of beetle that has a wireworm as an immature form. So here's a picture of some common beetle grubs, and both of these are common leaf beetles. On the left is a cottonwood leaf beetle, and that picture even has an adult. You can see the large beetle, it's yellow with the black dashes on it. And the other ones that look kind of like short, fat caterpillars are the beetle grubs. On the right-hand side here is an air potato beetle, and these are the immature form or grubs for air potato beetles. So like I said, the stereotypical beetle grub looks very similar to the one on the left here. And all scarab beetles in their immature form have a grub. Little grubs grow up to be little beetles, and really, really big grubs grow up to be really, really large beetles. And we're going to see a few very large beetles in a little bit. So if you're digging in your garden and you run across beetle grubs, please don't think that you have to go out and spray or take some kind of control because you find a couple of grubs. Technically, those grubs live underground, and they do eat plant roots, and they'll eat roots from weeds and grasses and even eat roots from your lawn grass. But I've never seen enough grubs in a yard eating enough turf grass roots to actually be a problem. So even though all of us have some grubs, I mean, if we all drove over to my house right now and started digging up my front yard, we'd find some grubs. But I have not in 8 years with extension encountered somebody who had so many in their yard, they actually had to do, apply some kind of treatment and actually reduce the number of grubs. So don't worry, your garden and your lawn can handle a couple of grubs. Don't go into a panic over it. And the picture on the right here is of a click beetle larva or immature form or a wireworm. And you can see from the two pictures of what looks like a really long, really skinny caterpillar, those are wireworms. And if you're digging around in your garden, you'll find them sometimes. They don't hurt anything. Click beetles eat decaying matter. They do not eat your plants. They don't eat your grass. They don't damage your house. You really don't have to worry about them at all. So beetle adults, like I said, have chewing mouth parts. And sometimes at the front of their head, they have this very long snout or beak. That's very typical of weevils, and we're going to see a few of them in a little bit. Their mouth parts are at the very end of that snout. Now, very important, beetles, adult beetles have wings and they fly. Many of them fly very well. And they have two sets of wings. The top set or front wings are called elytra. And this is the hard shell on the back of a beetle. That shell is actually two of its wings. And if you ever see a beetle open them up and begin to fly, underneath them is another pair of wings or two more wings that are more membranous. And between the four of them, they're able to fly. So that hard shell on their back isn't really a shell, it's two of its wings hiding the other two wings underneath it. But beetles, adult beetles get wings and they fly very well. And one way that we're able to identify them as something that's distinctive between different families of beetles is their feet. Insect feet are called tarsi, and different families of beetles have feet with different numbers of segments on it. So when I'm identifying a beetle, at some point it asks how many segments on the tarsi are there, and I have to look at beetle feet underneath the microscope and start counting 1, 2, 3, 4, and that helps you to figure out what beetle family they're a member of. So a couple of different families or groups of beetles that you may see in your yard. These are all very common here to Central Florida, or if everybody watching is at least from the state of Florida or even outside of Florida. These are all very common beetles that you probably could see either in your garden or your flower beds, or maybe in your garage, or maybe even inside your house. They might sneak in sometimes. And we'll cover whether they're a problem or a pest or not. Now, one group of beetles is the family Staphylinide or rove beetles, and these are very, very beneficial beetles. Commercial farmers love to see beetles like this in their fields, and they even go out of their way when they're spraying or controlling other pests to try to preserve the rove beetles, because all they do is they live in little holes and they run around fields, they run around your yard, your garden, and eat other pest insects. Neither one of these pictures shows their mouth part really well, but they do have big jaws where they grab other insects. So rove beetles are very beneficial, and ground beetles are very beneficial also. And they're in the family Carabidae. And as we're going to see, because I do have some to show you in a few minutes, many of them can be very, very colorful. It's a very colorful, pretty beetle as a general rule. Some of them are just plain black or kind of a shiny black with a little bit of iridescent colors mixed in. And you'll notice these beetles have really long legs. That's because they can run really fast. I believe there's a species of ground beetle that is technically the fastest member of the animal kingdom for its size, because these are small beetles, but they are very, very fast. So ground beetles, you'll see them sometimes in your yard. You see them more often in the woods. So if anybody here is a hiker and you go out hiking, you'll see them run across the paths. And what they're doing is they'll see an insect 10 feet away and boom, they run just as fast as they can to catch that insect and grab it in its great big jaws and eat it and take care of it that way. So ground beetles are very, very common in your yard, and we're going to see probably the most common species. Very colorful, very pretty beetle. You definitely don't want to do anything to get rid of that. You want to encourage those kind of bugs in your yard. Curculionidae, or weevils, is a large group of insects, and these are the ones that have the long snout or the modified head parts. And you can see on the left-hand picture here, what that is that is a palmetto weevil. And that is a very, very large weevil. Technically, it's the largest weevil in North America, and we do have them here, and they can feed on your palm trees. And if you get palmetto weevils on your palm tree, they're going to lay eggs up at the very top of the palm tree, and the beetle grubs are going to eat the growing tip of your palm tree and probably kill it. And there's not a whole lot you can do about it. So when we show them in our lab in a little bit, we'll talk a little bit about how to go about avoiding that problem. But if you look at the picture, it has that elongated projection on its head, and that is what its eyes and its antenna are connected to. Now, the picture on the right here is a pine bark beetle. And in real life, this would be about the size of a grain of pepper, maybe 2 grains of pepper side by side. So they are very, very tiny, but they are in the same family also. So these are the kind of beetles that drill holes in your pine trees and finish them off. Pine bark beetles generally, and there are exceptions to this, but as a general rule, most bark beetles with trees don't attack perfectly healthy trees. They always look for sick or weakened or stressed out trees, or maybe a tree that's just recently been hit by lightning. That's very attractive to them because the tree is no longer able to defend itself. Or if it's a tree in your yard and you've done things to make that tree very weak and stressed out, it is going to be the most attractive tree in the neighborhood for beetles. And the beetles are going to come along and they're going to finish off your tree. They generally don't kill healthy trees. They finish off unhealthy trees. So we're going to show a couple examples of invasive beetles that are an exception to that rule. They can and do kill perfectly healthy trees, but pine bark beetles and many of the other tree beetles that we have here in Central Florida, especially the native ones, only seek out and target weakened or unhealthy trees. So keep that in mind. If you ever do have a tree that you think beetles killed, chances are something else killed that tree and the beetles only finished it off. So you probably had some kind of underlying problem that attracted the beetles. That's why it's so very important for any kind of tree you have, pine trees, palm trees, oak trees, maple trees, anything else, that you take the correct steps to keep your tree healthy. That way it's going to help to keep the beetles away. The beetles are going to go like, oh, your palm tree is so healthy and well cared for. It's able to defend itself, and I'm not going to go pick on that. I'm going to go down the street and pick on the palm tree that got over trimmed and all of its leaves cut off because he can't defend himself anymore. That's the one I'm going to target. So keep that in mind with beetles and trees. Leaf beetles are very, very common. They tend to be a pest in the garden because they eat leaves. The one on the right here is a striped cucumber beetle. So if you're growing cucumbers and these beetles are eating the leaves, it's a pest. The one on the left is the air potato beetle, and it's a leaf beetle also in the family Chrysomelidae. So if you have a problem with air potato vines in your yard, it is a terrible invasive plant. You are happy to see these beetles there eating it. So beetles that eat leaves, if it's a plant you want, it's a pest. If it's a plant you don't want or don't care about, it's either beneficial or you don't really care all that much. There are plenty of leaf beetles that eat different various weeds, different shrubs and things that might grow in the woods. And if it's something you don't care about, then it's really not a pest. So probably the largest group of beetles in the beetle world are scarab beetles. And there are a ton of them. And these are all very, very common here in Central Florida. These all come from grubs that live in your yard, or maybe in potted plants. You'll see them there sometimes, or maybe in a compost pile. We found them there sometimes. And the pictures here on the left-hand side, that is a green June beetle. The one in the middle is a, I believe that's Japanese beetle. And a little bit of trivia, we do not have Japanese beetles here in Central Florida. So if you've just moved here and you think you have Japanese beetles in your yard, you don't. We don't have them here. The farthest south they go is pretty much the Florida state line. So up in the Panhandle, in some areas they have Japanese beetles. We do not have them here in Central Florida. And the one on the right there is a Goliath beetle. That is the largest scarab beetle that is in North America. And we have one of those to show you also in just a little bit. Let's see how I'm doing here. Doing okay time-wise. Darkling beetles, really, really common beetles. They tend to be kind of medium-sized to large. They're long and they're black. And you'll find them running around your garden, your flower beds. They just eat decaying matter. They are one of the kind of recycling beetles, and they are nothing to worry about. They will not damage your house. They will not hurt you. They do not bother anything if they sneak into your garage. They're just out there running around. And one kind of darkling beetle, I'm not sure if we can show it or not. If you turn the lights on in the hallway, we have some here in an aquarium, and we're raising our own mealworms. So there's a species of darkling beetle that its immature form is mealworms. So if any of you have a lizard or a toad or a frog as a pet, or any other kind of pet that you have to purchase mealworms for, mealworms are immature beetles. They're immature darkling beetles. And we actually have a few here. We have a whole bunch of beetles in the aquarium here. So another pretty cool group of beetles are Cerambycidae. These are longhorn beetles, and they tend to be fairly large beetles. And like the name says, they have really, really long antennae. These beetles, the immature ones, always feed on trees. So if you live out in the country near a forest, or you go hiking a lot, you're probably going to encounter these guys. We have a lot of native species here in Florida, and these beetles will lay their eggs in trees out in the woods, usually trees that are either damaged or weakened. If a pine tree in the woods gets hit by lightning, and I was up in Gainesville in service training where they're actually able to show this, we got there and they said, yesterday we had a thunderstorm come through and we saw a pine tree over there get hit by lightning 24 hours ago. And we went out there and they had already cut the tree down. It was filled with longhorn beetle larvae already, because these beetles, when a tree gets hit by lightning, it puts off a certain smell, and these beetles, boom, find it immediately and lay their eggs in it, and it will be filled with beetle larvae chewing away at the dead tree, because if a pine tree gets hit by lightning, it's dead. They don't recover from that. So these beetles lay their eggs in it and finish it off. Now we do have invasive species of longhorn beetles, and a very important one is the Asian longhorn beetle. That is not a problem in Florida. The only place in the US where it's a big problem is upstate New York and other parts of New England. Many of those areas up there, I think they've actually eradicated them, but they're still present in parts of New York. So they're always battling them up there. But I got a really good story to tell you. A lady in South Carolina, older woman, was in her yard one day and she saw this great big colorful pretty beetle. So she took a picture of it and sent it to her son, who worked for agricultural extension in a different state. And she said to her son, you know, look at this picture of a big beautiful beetle I took. And he said, Mom, I don't know what kind of beetle that is, but you may want to share that with somebody with the South Carolina extension. So she did. She sent them the picture and they looked at it and they went like, uh-oh, I think that's an Asian longhorn beetle. So they sent it to South Carolina Forestry and they went, oh no, that is an Asian longhorn beetle. They went out there and discovered that the beetles had established in this area in South Carolina. They figured they had been there for about a year, but they had not spread very far yet. So they were able to immediately quarantine the area. They do not allow wood to be moved in or out of that area. They're setting up traps, monitoring them, and they have not eradicated them. But it's much better to catch these problems early instead of when they're all over the entire state of South Carolina, because these beetles love maple trees and they will kill perfectly healthy maple trees, all of them. So they are a huge potential problem everywhere because we do have maple trees here in Florida. They have a lot of maple trees in South Carolina. They have a lot of dead maple trees now. But fortunately, this lady saw something and she said something and it actually made it to the correct person where it could get sent to the correct person. And that's really a huge success story. So I do have a sample that we're going to show you in just a few minutes here. Another group of beetles are click beetles or Elateridae. And these are the beetles, if you're a kid, you take one, you put it on its back, and it clicks and flies up in the air and lands on its feet. Click beetles are never a problem. They are not a pest. The immature ones can feed on trees out in the forest, but they don't even kill trees. So that is not a beetle that you have to worry about. The family Coccinellidae, which includes lady beetles or ladybird beetles or ladybugs, whatever you want to call them, like the picture on the right here, that is your stereotypical ladybug or ladybird beetle. And we probably all recognize one of those. And that one specializes in aphids, whiteflies, mealybugs. It's got a pretty wide range of things it's happy to eat. And all of those are really bad plant pests. But you probably wouldn't be too familiar with the one on the left here. And the common name for that is mealybug destroyer. So with a name like that, you could probably figure that they really like to eat mealybugs. And if you have a problem with mealybugs on your hibiscus or any of your vegetable crops or other ornamentals in your yard, if you have these beetles out there feeding on them, they will very quickly clean up and gobble up all the mealybugs on a plant. I've seen it happen before. And this is a native species, a native Florida species of lady beetle that doesn't look exactly the same as your stereotypical red with the black spots one does. So let's go look at some beetles in just a moment here. And before we do that, there's my contact information. So I'll go ahead and share that with you again. If you have any other further questions or need to get in contact with me. So let's see if we could do this correctly. Lily, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, but you sound like you're really far away.
Okay, I'll get closer and we have to go into the other room. We're going to go into our lab here that we have in our office. So I'll try to let Teresa, my camera person here, keep up with me. So we actually have a lab here at our office, and we normally use this for hands-on work with our classes, But because of COVID, we haven't been able to do an awful lot of that recently. So. Okay, here we have a whole bunch of beetles here today. So I brought in my collection box, and everything in here is all different species of beetles. Almost all of them are from Florida. And this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to beetles here in Florida. We have so many different species, so many different types. And here we have a couple. This right here is a Goliath beetle. And if you can tell from my finger for size perspective, they are here in Central Florida. We actually have one as a pet here at our office. One of our master gardeners found it during the winter in his compost bin and brought it in. And he lived for about a year, I think. We had him here for almost a year. He loved to eat rotting fruit, but if you let it rot for too long, the alcohol would get into him and he kind of stumble around drunk a little bit after, gobbling down the fruit. But if you look hard enough, you can find these in your yard. And this is the largest scarab beetle in North America, and they are not a pest. The immature ones do eat plant roots, but they're not anything that you have to worry about. We have a whole variety of other, and the common names for these are ox beetles. That one's a male. This one here, I believe, is a female. A lot of different species of them. These are the big beetles that fly around during the summer. They're attracted to your porch lights and maybe a lot of times to windows when they see the light inside, and they smack up against the window. So during the summer, if you hear tapping on your window, it's either your neighbor or it's big beetles bumping up against the window. These are really common and definitely nothing to worry about. They do not damage anything, destroy anything. Some of the ones that I'll use clear here.
We can't hear you, Bill.
All the beetles in the
There you
top
go.
row here, all the way over, and half of the next row. These are all different scarab beetles. You see, we got the really large Goliath beetles here. June bugs, or I guess the common name for them is June bugs, and they are starting to come out right now at night. They're little brown beetles that are also attracted to front porch lights. Their immature form are also grubs that live in your lawn and eat plant roots. But like I said several times, they're really never a pest. So they're just about to come out really soon. I think they get the term June bug is more for up north. That's when they come out up north. Here, they're more of a April bug, April or May bug, I guess. And if we're talking, if we look over here, this one here, ranchers and anybody with horses and cows love these beetles because a lot of them in your field will drastically reduce the amount of waste or poop that you have out there in the field.
So those are dung beetles? Is that what?
Ultimate recycling beetles. This one right here is pretty. When they're alive, the red markings on his back are a lot brighter. And this is a carrion beetle. And as you could probably guess from its name, it feeds on dead animals. So if an animal dies in the woods, or if, unfortunately is hit by a car alongside of the road, these beetles will smell that and literally within minutes will find it, and they lay their eggs on that dead animal, and the immature beetles will consume the dead animal. And they're very pretty kind of iridescent green with red right along the edges, and you see the very, very long legs. They are experts at running really, really fast to catch other insects, worms, caterpillars, millipedes, centipedes. They eat a wide variety of different things out in your yard. So they're beneficial. And let's see if you can get a good close-up on this one. There's a whole family of beetles called Scarabidae, and they're all predators, so they're all beneficial out in the yard. And one way you can tell them, the difference between them and the scarab beetles have the adults have very small mouths, The Carabidae have great big jaws, so I'm not sure how good of a close-up you're getting of the jaws, but they have like something out of a horror movie kind of jaws, and they use those jaws for catching other insects. So any large beetle that has big jaws is definitely a beneficial insect. Any other scarab beetle with a smaller mouth is really not a pest. Very, very few of them are ever a pest. And off the top of my head, any of them you might see here, Central Florida, is really not. So let's show some of the longhorn beetles here. And this one here, the pine borer in the center, you can see just how long those antennae are on that insect. That's pretty impressive. And that was found right in Brooksville. So anywhere where you have a lot of trees, you can find some of these beetles if you just go out there and look. And for my own personal collection here, this is an Asian longhorn beetle. Very, very pretty, attractive beetle. It has the black and white striped antenna, very long antenna, the little speckles on them. This is a terribly destructive insect. So if you ever see a beetle in your yard and you don't know what it is, you're like, I remember that Dr. Bill said it was a beetle, but I can't remember if it's good, bad, invasive. Do I need to tell somebody? Please feel free to just send us a picture, email me a picture. You know, if you do catch the insect, put it in a container or a jar, drop it by the office. We'll help you figure out exactly what it is and whether it's something you need to worry about or not worry about. But a lot of times beetles are just kind of fall into the heading of things that you really don't need to worry about. Like I said earlier, a lot of them are part of nature's cleanup crew, and they're just helping to clean up and break down organic matter out there in your garden. So don't go into a panic and go for the bug spray or call your pest control person to spray for them. There are some that are pests, but you need to know the difference between the pests and the beneficial ones. So I think that's about it for here. Let's head back to the office. And I put together a little quick quiz for everybody, but I promise the questions are going to be easy. So Lily, I hope you've been listening and following along. I expect you to get 100 on this. So follow me back into the other room here. What is the name of the hard shell on the back of a beetle? And I think I made this multiple choice. Is it Elantra? Is it Elytra? Or what exactly is, which of those two is it? Very good. I see Clara knows, and Brooke knows, and Heather knows. Okay. Yes, the correct answer to that is Elytra. So Elytra is the name of that hard shell on the back of a beetle, which is actually 2 of its 4 wings. So true or false, if you see beetles in your yard or on your property, the best thing to do is spray them with an insecticide. True or false? I see no, I see false, I see false. Very good. That is false. It may be a pest, and it may be the type of pest that you're going to have to spray something for. Sometimes it may be a pest that you're going to have to call a professional to spray for, but you need to find out for sure what it is before you just go ahead and start randomly spraying. I know that I speak with people sometimes who just moved to Florida, and they seem to think that we're just overwhelmed with insects here, and they believe in see a bug, spray a bug. Well, we don't encourage see a bug, spray a bug. You should see a bug, identify the bug, and then take it from there. And let me ask everybody, where's the best place to get an insect identified? If you see an insect in your yard and you take a picture, and you know, all you need to do is just grab your phone nowadays. Grab your phone, get a picture, you can text it to us, you can email it to us, you can catch it if you're not afraid to, and put it in a jar and bring it by the office. Where's the best place to get your insects identified?
Your neighborhood chat group.
Your next door neighbor. Your brother-in-law. Yeah, your Facebook gardening group. If you do that, you will get 35 answers, only one of which is correct. There are pest, I know that there are plant apps that you can take a picture on your phone, and they work pretty well sometimes, but not all the time. I've had people send pictures to us where it either gave them the wrong answer or said that it couldn't figure out what it was. So I do see the correct answer here. Hernando Extension, the extension office.
Your local extension office.
Exactly.
Or your son, who will send it to a local extension office.
Clara makes a really good point here, and I think Clara gets 100% on the quiz. Extension and bugguide.com. That is a really, really good resource. Bug, B-U-G, guide, G-U-I-D-E, I think all one word.com. That is a university-sponsored website where people send in pictures of insects, and university researchers and experts from across the country are members of that, and they identify them, and they break it all up down to species. When I identify an insect, when I come up with an answer of what it is, I double check it on Bug Guide to make sure the pictures line up. Very, very good resource. All of us at the university use it. It's a little hard for a homeowner if they have no idea where to start, what kind of insect it is. You could scroll through pictures of insects for probably 3 days in that database. So you have to have an idea of at least what order and how to narrow it down. But if you think you know what it is, it's a great way to double check things. So sorry, my poll did not work there. We're going to have to work on the polling. It says that I'm still logged in from another device, which I'm not. So Lilly, did anybody have any questions here? I think I saw one.
I actually can't really see the chat, so I didn't even see all the answers that you were giving. I only see, what I tried to write you, but so you're going to have to look.
Well, I can see it. So we got a question. Do we have rhinoceros or stag beetles here in Florida? I lived in Japan and the kids love to collect them as pets. Yes, we do. And we have them out there during the summer, generally June, July, and August. My guess is we probably have different species than they do in Japan, but they're probably very, very closely related and they look very similar. They're very, very large black beetles, and the males will have a big horn on top. And they are a lot of fun to catch and play with. You could keep them as pets.
Only Bill would say they're a lot of fun to catch and play with. But if you do.
Well, no, I'm sure Teresa would agree with me on that. She's the one that actually has the collection here at the office.
And if you have kids, or if you yourself are interested in seeing Bill's collection, just come on by the extension office. Either Bill or Teresa will be there and glad to, show you around there, his collection.
Yeah, and I have to start putting together an office collection of different common pests to be able to share with people and show them.
I have your email showing up only to me. I don't know if that went to everyone.
No, I sent it to everybody.
Okay. I'm only seeing the direct messages. I was going to tell you, I know your email.
Okay. Then I'll send it to everyone in the meeting. We go ahead and put my email in the chat box.
There you go.
And we have a question about, are stink bugs bad? That's a big question. And it depends.
Mm-hmm.
If the stink bug you're talking about is a plant pest and is feeding on a plant that you want, maybe something in your vegetable garden or your landscape, you would probably consider it to be bad. There are a couple species of stink bugs that are in the same family. They're all in the same family, Pentatomidae, that are beneficial because they eat pest insects. So bad stink bugs have a mouth part. They poke into plants that you're trying to grow, and they suck the juices out of the plants. Good stink bugs will catch caterpillars and other pest insects and poke into them and feed on that insect. So as a general rule, most stink bugs that you're going to find, especially on your vegetable plants in your garden, are bad. But technically, there are some that are beneficial that you really want to keep and encourage in your garden. You want to be happy when you see them. I'm always happy when I see ladybugs and good stink bugs and wheel bugs and things like that in my garden, because I know those are good insects.
Now, if you're from Pennsylvania and you hear the word stink bug,
Oh,
you're not
yeah.
going to agree that they are a good insect. Those are the brown, what do you call them?
Brown marmorated stink bugs.
Marmorated, yes.
And up in the Northeast, they are inundated with them. And if you moved here from up there, you know how bad they can be. They'll get into your house and try to overwinter. They'll be flying around the inside of your house on a winter's night. It's just a huge problem up there. We have them in Florida, and they found a population of them over in Lake County, but they are not widespread, and they're not a big problem here yet.
They're a very, very, very big problem up there. They get, they overwinter. They like to overwinter between your house and the siding. And sometimes they freeze and die in there. And then, so then they rot. And they get, you're right, they get in the house. They might be in your cereal boxes. I know people up there are having tremendous problems. I was there, I believe, one June when they swarmed all at once, and there was up on a cliff, and they swarmed up from a river to the houses on the cliff, and there were people using leaf blowers to try to get in their door.
Ew.
So, yeah, so this is just an example of what happens when we get an invasive exotic species. But as Bill mentioned, for whatever reason, they don't present a problem in Florida. And if they were going to, they would have by now, because people travel. Lots of people come from Pennsylvania, and they would have brought them with them. And obviously, they haven't really established here yet.
Yes, that's a way that a lot of really bad invasive insects can get spread. Cars, campers, RVs, people taking firewood from one state to another is a very common way that some of those really bad tree boring beetles get moved around. Wooden pallets that come here from China is how many of them get here initially. So we want to be careful about all those things. Clara asked, will we get a copy of slides after? Clara, if you email me, I'd be happy to send you a PDF of the slides. My email, and I already put it in the chat box, is WLESTER@UFL.edu. So if you email me or respond to the Zoom email that you got for joining up and signing up for this class, you should be able to contact me that way. And I'm happy to send anybody a PDF copy of the slides. Just shoot me an email with your email. And Clara also asked suggestions for a great beetle book. I don't really know. I use a lot of identification guides, which tend to not be books. It's just a journal article or information online, very technical about, you know, does your insect have, you know, 3 tarsi or 4? If it has 3, you know, you take the step. If it has 4, they're identification guides for keying out insects. I'm sure there's a lot of really good beetle books on the market, but you really want to look for something that's going to focus more on Florida beetles. And University of Florida has a lot of really good information on there. If you Google University of Florida beetles, you'll come up with a lot of good articles and technical information and picture guides that way. And Clara also says all part of the food web. Yes, they all are very important. Everything out there plays a role. Invasive insects kind of play a bad role. It shows that we made a mistake,
Mhm.
or somebody made a mistake. It got here somehow where it shouldn't have. But everything does play a role.
99% of the time, the species that made the mistake was human.
Exactly.
Yes. And those grubs, speaking of part of the food chain, so much nutrition in those for birds and, on up the food chain there too.
Sure. And those grubs are consumed by wasps. They're species of wasps that specialize in finding beetle grubs in the ground and laying their eggs in it. So they depend on beetle grubs, and they also help to keep them under control so that you're not going to have to spray your yard or put something down to protect your lawn. Birds love beetle grubs. Lizards, amphibians, reptiles, everything. Everybody out there loves beetle grubs.
Yes. Meerkats.
Meerkats, sure, meerkats. I don't think we have them in Florida yet. I'm sure we
No,
will.
but I mean, if you ever saw The Lion King,
Okay, sure. they like
meerkats
beetle
and
grubs.
wild boars like grubs.
Like I said, everybody likes beetle grubs. Okay, guys, sorry I couldn't get the poll to work. I hope you enjoyed the little virtual tour here. What did everybody think of that? Do you think we should try doing that more?
There were portions of it where we lost the audio, so we couldn't hear what you were saying, like the whole dung beetle thing. we didn't hear it.
Oh, okay.
And
So
a
I
few
need to use my
others.
big room voice even louder.
No,
I
I
think.
think it was more to do with the microphone capturing you. Had to be where she was standing and you facing it more. Otherwise, it was great. But there was, could have been 10 seconds at a time where we couldn't hear you. So.
Okay, and our internet in different rooms here on the property is sketchy at best.
Right. But you did pretty good. And all kudos to Teresa, who makes all things happen in the background. Yes.
I like to say I couldn't make it through the day without Teresa.
That's
So
true.
my loyal camera person.
Yes. I just want to remind everyone that our wrap-up class for this series of Rotted, Recycled, and Resurrected is going to be on May 12th at 10 a.m. That is a Wednesday. You can find the event on my Facebook page as well as Extension's Facebook page. And that will be me talking about how the things that we learned about the fungus, the beetles, all the other things that the soil, what happens in the soil, what does that mean for us at home in our yard? And we're it's called Bringing It All Back Home, and we're going to talk about what we can do to encourage the circle of life in our own landscape. But that won't, that'll be May 12th at 10 a.m. Okay. And I guess you've answered everybody's questions, and I learned a lot. See, that's why I hang out with Bill all the time, because I learn stuff from him every day. That's the kind of people I choose to hang around with. So.
And I learn something new every single day at work.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And
okay, thank you very much.
Yes, and you can stop the recording, and we'll see everyone tomorrow. Nope, Thursday. We will have the virtual plant clinic at 10 a.m. as well.